Welcome to Coast Vue, where we celebrate every single day the amazing people who are making coastal Mississippi such a great place to live, work, and play. I really appreciate you joining us on the SuperTalk Gulf Coast channel, 103.1. But if you're listening on Facebook or YouTube or your favorite podcast, again, we really appreciate you engaging with this show. So many of our shows are timeless. They're just great lessons about what it takes to build a great community. So we love talking to people from elected officials, governmental officials, non-governmental people who are involved as volunteers in the community. I love talking to entrepreneurs. We're going to be talking with one here shortly in just a second. And from time to time, we actually get a chance to reach pretty far out. Like for example, yesterday's show where I had Laura Jackson on from Ukraine. Laurie is a independent missionary. She's been in Ukraine since 2014. And she had a chance to get out, actually, and she chose to stay. And since our conversation, she sent me a few more photos. She lived on the west bank of the river, right in actually the Keys city limits, but just outside of town, in an apartment there. And a few days ago, sort of escaped to western Ukraine. And the picture she sent me was of family members kind of taking their final photo together, as the men and young sons in the family stay in the country, while the women and the children go on to cross over into, in this particular case, Poland. Now, people are crossing into other countries, but the vast majority of the people who are escaping Ukraine are actually going into Poland. And she's there just helping those families. She mentioned to me, actually, after we got done with our conversation, that she had this dream about, getting some buses or some vans so she could help people who were working their way toward the Poland border, help them make their way there. And her thought was to have one van, and within, say, a 24-hour period, they'd already located 3 vans. And they were hoping to get another van. It's interesting when you have these like independent pop-up efforts, what I call the 1,000 points of light, somebody just meeting a need in the community. I talk about that happening here in coastal Mississippi all the time in normal circumstances, certainly after hurricanes, et cetera. But in Laurie Jackson's case, that's what she's doing inside Ukraine today. And you can go back and listen to the conversation. You can see it at YouTube or our Facebook page. But what I want to bring your attention to is what she said is the reason why she stayed in the Ukraine for so long. The way she describes Ukrainians and their love of their country, their love of independence, their love of each other, and their spirit. And I couldn't help but think about coastal Mississippians and our spirit. And what would it be like if we were under siege in the way that they are, Ukrainians are at this moment? It's just sad. I can't get it out of my head, to be quite honest with you. But I'm really privileged to have this opportunity to know Laurie. My cousin's daughter, Michelle Tice, introduced us. Michelle actually has adopted 2 kids from Europe, and one of her sons came from Eastern Europe, and Laurie was actually there in 2014 when the war started with Russia, and of course my cousin's daughter Michelle adopted one of her sons, and that's how she got to know Laurie, who I said was there since 2014 initially, but actually it's 2006, right after Hurricane Katrina, is when she moved over to Ukraine from Tallahassee. But it was a very compelling conversation. She and I are going to be checking in every week or two and just see how things are going, so we can really stay in tune with what's happening there. And again, I know it's on all of our minds. It's certainly on my mind, and we'll stay in touch with Laurie. I'm actually reaching out to a few others that are in Ukraine as well, and hope to have communication with them too. But they feel like us. They feel like coastal Mississippians when you really get a sense to see how much they love their place. Anyway, with all that said, we'll move on now. I want to welcome someone who's been on the show before, and someone I really enjoy spending time with, but it's Jourdan Nicaud. He runs the Nicaud Restaurant Group, and they've done some amazing investments all across coastal Mississippi. We'll remind you what those things are. But before we go any further, let me say good morning to you, Jourdan. How are you?
Doing well. Good morning, Ricky.
It's good to see you. Hey, listen, I went back and checked. And when you and your brother Field were on our show, that video got viewed thousands of times and shared a bunch. So either you have a lot of friends or there are a lot of people who are very interested in what you guys are up to these days. I think it's a little bit of both, frankly. But you do have a lot of friends up and down the coast, don't you?
We do. We're very, very fortunate in that.
And so one of the things that we're going to do, just so that people have an understanding of this, we'll kind of relay the foundation for what the Nicaud Restaurant Group is. Some of what their developments are, and some of what they're working on today, which is really important. And but before we go any further, let me just say, why don't you remind people sort of the foundation of your organization, sort of what your footprint is here along coast of Mississippi.
We own restaurants from Bay St. Louis to Ocean Springs. We have Fields Steak and Oyster Bar in Bay St. Louis, Bacchus on the Beach in Pass Christian, Phillips Pass Christian, Hotel Pass Christian, and the newest restaurant we actually have opened called The Deck, which opened up October of last year. Then we have in Biloxi, Phillips in Biloxi. We have a new Fields Steak and Oyster Bar that we're hoping to open sometime in mid-April. And then in Ocean Springs, we have Charred and Rooftop.
Wow. What I know about you is that I don't know when you sleep, frankly, and we'll come back to that in a second, because you're a man who is just constantly figuring out what other marks can you make in coastal Mississippi, where are great investment opportunities. You've gone beyond restaurants now. You mentioned the hotels. You're wanting to do mixed use and all kinds of stuff. What's driving you? What's the goal of Nicaud Restaurant Group? You actually should change the name to Hospitality Group, but anyway, go ahead. What's driving you?
So I actually grew up in New Orleans when I was younger. My family and I moved over here when I was a freshman in high school, and then I actually ended up going back to college in New Orleans. And one thing that a lot of my friends from when I was younger have left the area, and because there were certain deficiencies in the area, things that we didn't have that we needed. And so my goal has always been to bring as many things as I can from outside Mississippi that Mississippi that doesn't have, and bring it to the area. And so what I look for things that are missing in certain areas, and I try to fill those voids, you can call them, and help make our area better.
Well, do you have, is it in your mind what this assessment is, or do you have a scorecard that you go by, a checklist that you go by? How do you decide what's missing?
Well, we decide first. We always talk to the city leaders and kind of see what they want. And so whenever we look at a project, we kind of look at the project, talk to the city leaders, and figure out, is this a viable project? Is it something that the city wants, and is it something that is needed in the area? And from there, once we figure out, yes, this is something the city wants, this is something that's needed in the area, we start looking for locations and venues, and we find the area, and we start developing it. And our goal is always to start off with one thing in an area, and then in that area kind of blow up as many things as we can in the walking distance in that area. Because we find that, especially with housing and restaurants, they're all symbiotic. So people live there, they eat there, they might play there, they work there, and the more you get people walking around in a certain area, the better that does for that city and for that area to develop.
Well, what's cool about that, and for regular listeners, you know this, but if you're sort of listening to Coast Vue for the first time, what's happened is that the whole notion of economic development has changed pretty dramatically over the last few years, and it's going to continue to change as we go forward. There's a lot of reasons for that. And just in a nutshell, in the old days, and I say the old days because they certainly are still doing this, there were a lot of industrial customers that were pursued, and they wanted them to come back and locate their headquarters in your place, or maybe you wanted them to locate a factory or some kind of office or regional office or whatever it might be. But they were looking for some kind of brick and mortar investment in your community. And a lot of efforts went into that. They were giving, a lot of financial incentives and all kinds of things to bring jobs to your community. In the new economy, the new economy is really about serving what is called the creative class. So this is a large number of people who can work remotely. It could be architects and planners. It could be, graphic designers, copywriters, writers. I mean, the list of people in that category are very, very long, but they can live anywhere. And so I think one of the ways that we can battle brain drain, which is what you're concerned about, Jourdan, is by building the kind of places where people would want to live. And as one of my friends from up at Mississippi State says, build a place where someone can find a spouse. And if you think about that, that's a pretty good way to say it. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation about how continuing to build these various dimensions of a community help create a sense of place that I talked about the last time that Jourdan and his brother and I got together, and it will cause people to want to stay here or move here. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back to Coast Vue. I have Jourdan Nicaud from Nicaud Restaurant Group. And when we went to break, we were talking about sort of the difference between the old economy and sort of the new economy that Jourdan and his brother Phil and others in his company are really focused on impacting. I noticed the other day there was a great headline, Jourdan, and it said, and this is in the Sun Herald, Mississippi's only statewide elected millennial wants to fight brain drain, and here's how. And he says that Mississippi is losing young people faster than most other places, and it's time that we do something about it. And it's Shad White, the state auditor, and he's just really, really focused on it. It's a great story, incidentally, but he says it's time for us to quit talking about it and do something about it. You get it, though. What is it that caused you to get it? And did you just sort of look inside yourself and the friends that surrounded you and see what is it that was taking them away, or what is it that they love most about here? What's your thoughts on that?
No, I have. And honestly, it was from growing up when I was younger and watching some of my friends move away and talking to them from high school. I went to St. Stanislaus and talking to them and seeing what was driving them to kind of leave the area or go to Atlanta or Austin or Colorado and just see what was driving that area. And one of the things was that one was obviously a higher paying job. The other thing was that there was more things to do and more downtown living, more apartments. And so as I went and visited them and visited other of my family outside, I saw voids here that I believe were opportunities as well. And I think that the people here want to be able to do the same things that everyone else does. We just don't have the amenities yet. But I think that's what makes this Gulf Coast so amazing, is that we really are one of the last opportunities in the country to be able to develop on the water and bring people and give it to the people to be able to create a better area. And
No, that's good. Go ahead. You finish your thought.
No, so, and actually getting back to Shad White's comments on Herald. So whenever the BP money came out, I truthfully believe the best use for a lot of that money would be to create, instead of doing, because we're never going to have the Amazons or the big, I mean, we'll have some of them, we're never going to have the big headquarters. But the best way to utilize, I think, a lot of that money would be to create these mini loans and have them almost be like forgiveness loans, similar to the PPP loans, to where they're $50,000 micro loans, $100,000 micro loans for graduates of our universities, or for people who want to make an investment into the area, and saying, hey, listen, you're 21, you're 22, you're graduating from Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Southern Miss, MGCCC. You've been offered an opportunity to make a certain amount of money in Austin, Atlanta, one of these bigger cities, Baton Rouge, whatnot. But we don't have the opportunities for you to do that. But what we do have the opportunities for you is to go ahead and make your own business, make your own investment into the area. And we'll go ahead. You write a business plan. You meet these certain criterias, and we'll give you a micro loan, $50,000, $100,000, to be able to do that. And if you meet certain criterias and you have the business open for 3 or 4 years, then we'll forgive the loan after 5 years.
I think that's a great idea, Jourdan. And I think the point is that I think what you're trying to describe is that one idea that involves how to use the coast restoration funds in a way. I think we've got like 14 more years of distributing money. So I think we've gone through 3 rounds. I think we've improved somewhat the kind of projects that we're funding, but I really think, and as Paige Roberts, the president and CEO of the Jackson County Chamber, and I discussed last week, we're struggling with defining what transformation means. If you go read the bill, which I have in quite detail, what you'll see is that they tried to describe it, or they did describe it, that the money that comes from BP, these are not tax dollars, Jourdan. This is money that came to us from BP as a result of the spill. We had to fight for 3/4 of it to be spent on the coast of Mississippi. That's really unfortunate, actually, because it hit here. But the legislature said, okay, we'll let 3/4 of the money go to coast of Mississippi. We're going to set up this advisory committee. We're going to score the project, which I think scoring the project is a good idea, because what it does is, if we can continue to sort of tweak the scoring, it helps us better define what transformational really is. Okay, so what they did is they're going to set this thing up as an advisory committee. And so what that then did is it created this little window where legislators could go around the committee. And what's happened with the Coast Restoration Fund to some extent is it's become kind of a political football. They're just dispersing a little bit over here and a little bit over there. Sometimes it's building a municipal building. Sometimes if you look at the description, I don't really know what it is. I mean, it's going back to a city for economic development. They haven't even defined what it is. We haven't done a good job, generally speaking, of defining what transformation really means. And we need to bring that conversation back, because the reality is it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. I talk about it a lot, but the average person doesn't talk about it. And we need to get better at understanding how we can better use that money. And until we do, we may go over the next 14 years and just continue to use that money as a political football. And we'll look back in 15 years and say, whoa, man, did we screw this up? Yeah, 20% of the projects were transformational or great ideas or whatever, but 80% of them were, building buildings where they could have got money from other sources, and now we missed an opportunity. That's your concern as well, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I love doing transformation process, and I see the coast starting to transform, and it really is awesome with what's happening here. I mean, it really is a really cool thing that I'm a part of, and that I really enjoy being a part of it. It's really awesome to just being able to, talking to Ivan Spinner about all that he's doing in the area. I mean, it really is awesome watching other people come in there and do it, and I love being a part of it as well.
Well, look, here's what I do know, and certainly my years at the Sun Herald and working in other communities, that the kind of people that have the resources to invest in your community, those kind of people they're few and far between. We're not, it's not like, we could call a meeting today and we'd fill up the Coliseum with people who have millions of dollars to invest. That's not the way this works. So the few people that we have that are willing to invest, we should identify who they are, find out what their projects are. And I'm still talking specifically about the BP money, but it can go further than that. Mm-hmm. And we got to say, okay, how can we help make projects work by the state through the BP money, which is not tax money again. The state through the BP money can help make projects work that otherwise may not have worked. How can the state be a partner in creating a sense of place? And you're right. I mean, this is something we talked about after Hurricane Katrina in great detail, and that is this whole notion of, walkable communities. And, you look at what's happened to the price of real estate, this better than most, in places like Bay St. Louis and Ocean Springs. Bay St. Louis, I think the cost per square foot is highest in the entire state of Mississippi now. Ocean Springs probably in the top 3 now. But you see what's happening in downtown Pascagoula. I know that you've spent some time understanding what's happening in Pascagoula, the development of a historic district, the number of mixed-use developers that are starting to pour into downtown, what's happening in downtown Biloxi, which I think is absolutely a diamond getting ready to be cut in Biloxi, because you've got this old town scene, and all of these people coming to the communities, incredible restaurants. And what we need more of is housing. We need more really first class apartments and townhouses and living downtown. And you know that better than most, don't you?
Oh, no, I do. And Pascagoula, we have 2 projects going on right now over there, and that city and the economic board that Paige Roberts is a part of, it has done the best part of being able to give incentives, I think, to to developers than any other part of the Gulf Coast that I've seen so far. And really, I mean, their model, they're probably not like saying this, but should be copied by other cities and adopted all throughout the area. Donovan Scruggs and Paige Roberts, I mean, they've done a really, really terrific job. Michael Sullivan, that hosted the whole city council, they've done a really awesome job. And we're doing a mixed use development there, and two of them. And we're starting one next week, I think, actually, and the other one, I think about 3 or 4 months.
So, yeah, I mean, if you're able to talk more specifically about those, I'd love to hear more about them. But let's, before we do that, I say this all the time on the show. I have Paige regularly on the show. And what I say about Paige is the role the chamber is playing is not your traditional chamber role. I mean, you know, they certainly are interested in business and business issues. But what she is and what her board is enabling her and what they're enabling themselves to do is really foster sort of an atmosphere of community building. And the way she works with Mayor Willis, the way she works with the mayor of Moss Point and the mayor of Goshen, and to some extent even in Goshen, in Ocean Springs, it's really about community building. It's about finding ways to make it better for you, helping you find where you can do business, and then helping you sort of work your way through the steps. Because, you know, it is true. There's so many different parties involved in a development project, and any one of them can slow something down, and that can be awfully frustrating for someone like you, can it?
It really can be. There are other cities where it does get slowed down, and you have all these rules that come into play that basically the city officials, and it's not their fault that the council have passed all these zoning variations, and they have all these different ordinances that unfortunately make it so hard for us to do anything that we just can't, that our hands get tied, we don't walk away from the project.
Yeah, well, I want to hear specifically about the projects you're working on there. And I want to mention something to you that I learned from Andreas Dwani when he was in coastal Mississippi, the father of new urbanism after Hurricane Katrina, that speaks to this notion of zoning laws and how that all works and building codes, et cetera. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Jourdan Nicaud from the Nicaud Restaurant Group. Welcome back to Coast Vue. I have Jourdan Nicaud from the Nicaud Restaurant Group. And when we went to break, he was just talking about how it's not like really anyone's fault. But the truth is that zoning ordinances and building codes, which as Andreas Dwani taught me after Hurricane Katrina, is where the magic is in building a great community, that it's serendipity. You know, you have one code or change is made over here and one change is made over there. And before long, you've got this mismatch that's kind of hard to work through. And what he was really advocating, it didn't come to bear, but one of the things he was advocating is a common building code and zoning approach across coastal Mississippi, so that when a developer is developing in Pascagoula, he can go to Bay St. Louis and they're speaking the same language. They may not be identical because each community is going to be sort of different in that regard, but it would help if they would just streamline the process and go through the difficult process of defining what their sense of place is going to be, and then having the codes and zoning ordinances sort of support that. So in communities where it still may be a mismatch, when you've got people inside that community, like you mentioned about Pascagoula, who are helping you sort of navigate through that, it makes it easier for a developer when you have that kind of everyone's on the same page approach, doesn't it?
It really does. And honestly, being able to understand the codes, understand what you need to do to comply with the codes, and it's really, really beneficial. But you're right. When you go to one city, it's very easy, and the codes are very awesome in one, and you go to the other city, and the codes are more difficult. It makes it very hard. It makes you not want to work in the cities where the codes are more difficult, because why would you? You can go to cities where it's easier.
You also have building code departments or enforcers that are different from town to town. Some have enough resources, most don't. That makes it difficult. Sometimes it depends on the personality of the person involved. That makes it difficult. I've heard it all over a long period of time. But, I appreciate people like you, Jourdan, is willing to kind of hang in there, because obviously you've done business with just about every city along the coast. What are the projects that you're doing in Pascagoula?
So we are doing a project on Delmas in the historic district you were talking about earlier. And it's a really neat project. Basically, we bought a building on there, and we're doing 4 apartments, 2 bedrooms apartments, and two retail areas on the front. I mean, we actually already have tenants that are looking at both of the spots. So it was a pretty easy project and really fun. The city was really easy to work with, and it was great. I mean, when they actually got to the point where I actually had never actually been to Pascagoula for a while, and Mayor Willis, Paige Roberts, and Dave Maxwell actually had kept calling me to go down there, and Paige really stayed on top of it. And so I ended up going down there one day and saw how amazing that city had really come, because from our area, you really never thought of, is that a destination I want to go hang out in Pascagoula. It was more of a, hey, we would go there. There's a lot of jobs, there are a lot of opportunities there, but never really was an area where that I had thought about going downtown to hang out. But it really, what they're doing down there, it's really changed that area to where it is somewhere where I would enjoy hanging out, enjoy raising a family, enjoy all the things that you were talking about earlier. And it's really, and I'm very happy to be a part of that.
Yeah, the evolution of the restaurant scene that's happening there, and the so many different mixed-use developers that have come in there and bought buildings and done. I had the pleasure as well to walk around town with Paige and see some finished products, others that were under construction. But I mean, they're going to transform it. And if you think about Ingalls, people think about Ingalls, blue collar and all that. But here's the deal. You've got, first of all, you got very high paying jobs there. And you have a big thing that's happening now. Certainly the price of gas brings this into focus, is that in the old days, people wanted to live out in the rural areas somewhere. But these days, they don't necessarily want to do that anymore. They want to live close to where they work. And where they live, they want to be able to go play a little bit, eat a little bit, so, be able to be around other people that are like they are. And so the opportunity that Pascagoula has really grasped, as other cities are beginning to do this as well, is defining their sense of place, creating the opportunity for developers to come in there and really transform the downtown. And it's happening. It's not something that's just some vision that's out there. It's happening. And I've talked to a number of the developers that are engaged in that. And Pascagoula is going to be one of those cities to compete with.
What's funny is, so when we started our project in Delmas, I think there were probably about 7 buildings that were still available. And I think as of today, there's 0 buildings available. They've all been bought up and they've all been restored or are in the process of being restored. And it's very interesting. I mean, it's really cool watching that whole thing happen. And then we're doing another project with the old Ice House, where we're going to do a restaurant, a hotel development with a couple of other coffee shop and some banks and everything else. It's a really neat part to be a part of. I'm really excited about it.
The old Ice House, I saw that myself. I think about the time you were kicking tires on it. What a cool situation that is.
It's a very cool situation.
What I've heard about you is that when you come into town looking for property, you don't let much grass grow. Yeah, I think part of the reason is what you just said. You know that if you don't move on this, you have an eye for what other developers might see as well, and you don't want to miss the opportunity.
That's very true. I mean, we go down there, and also with Pascagoula, if it makes sense, it makes sense, and that's what makes sense. You have a city that's behind you. They're doing the incentives the correct way, and they're helping you with the incentives versus not helping you. It just makes sense, and that's what we knew, that it would be a good project and be a fun project to go off on. I mean, and Past Christiane's the same way. I mean, they've been great to work with us as well. Biloxi's the same way. They've all been awesome. It's been a really awesome experience.
Coming back to Biloxi for a second, Biloxi once again, opportunities galore. I mean, when you think about the number of people that are there and coming to that community, when you talk about Biloxi's future, how do you think about it?
How do I think Biloxi's future? I mean, I think it's very interesting. Where it's another city where 4 years ago, when we bought a couple of properties down there was for sale signs all over Biloxi. Now, I don't think there's a property in downtown Biloxi that's actually available for sale right now. And I think as you get people living downtown, all the businesses there are going to start blowing up, and then you won't have a building available for lease after that for a while. So I think it's going to be very interesting to watch the transition of that city, because it was interesting. Probably I'd say 5-6 years ago, when we first opened up a restaurant down there, it was almost like a ghost town at nighttime. I mean, it was great. You had your business was there, and people, you basically lived off of the casinos, and it kind of like, people who come in town, they come meet you and then go to the casinos and hang out, or then come back to your restaurant after casinos maybe. But that was kind of, you lived and died through them. And it's interesting watching that transition happen now, to where it's becoming a not saying a vital city, but more of a city type thing. People walking around, hanging out. You're having that whole downtown nature starting to to happen. It was really interesting is Josette's. We started that apartment complex, and we should be done by the end of this month and opening up and ready to go. And we're already almost leased out. And what's even more interesting is, since we started that project, there's at least 4 other apartments complexes that I know that are going down there. That people have called me and asked me kind of what my experience was working with the city. Did I enjoy it? What was the rent rates I was getting, and using me as comps for their own projects. And they're all coming down there, and it's really awesome. And I was talking to actually Ivan about this morning. If we can get about 1,000 apartments down there, 1,000 people living in that area, it will change. That city will be like no other.
You're right, because of its proximity to the small craft harbor, to the casinos. It's truly remarkable. Ivan Spinner, that you mentioned, bought the bank next to Nativity, and he's going to be doing his development, the Bella, after his daughter. And he continues to make investments all up and down the coast. And and Ivan and I will spend some time on the show here soon, where he goes in like that stretch on Pass Road. He just takes this little mismatch of buildings, and suddenly you got a little sense of place right there on Pass Road. He's just so focused on it, and he's now really focused on bringing more tourism opportunities, rentals that tourists can come in and take. And you look at some of the developments he's done there, man, and they're just first class. That gives you more confidence to know that when you have Josette's and have transformed that building and spent the money you've done on that, to see someone like Ivan come in behind you and make his investment. And you're right. If you get 1,000 hotels and apartments, and that's going to happen in downtown Biloxi, Lord, there's no looking back, man. It's going to be one of the top cities to want to live in the state of Mississippi, and people are going to come in from out of state to live there.
It's very true.
It's going to be so you mentioned Josette's building. People know that really well. They can see it when they drive to downtown Biloxi, see where it is in the construction project phase. But what else are you opening up in Biloxi, and what else are you thinking about?
So we're actually opening up a second Fields Steak and Oyster Bar, which is we have a restaurant in Bay St. Louis right now, and we're opening up a second one right now, and we're hoping middle April, and it's going right next to where Mary Mahoney's is.
Yes.
Very, very excited about it. It's going to be a similar menu, and we have a really cool project we're going ahead of there. Good.
Is it still called Fields Flights?
Well, it's actually called Field Steak and Oyster Bar. So we're actually going with the same concept as over there, and it's going to be really, really interesting. It's actually, that building's really cool, and I can't wait for people to see what we actually did to it, because it doesn't look like the Mardi Gras Museum anymore, in the inside at least, and it's going to be really awesome.
So this is Jourdan Nicaud. When we come back, we're going to continue the conversation. I've got some questions for Jourdan about success and how he approaches life. We'll see you after we get back from this break. Welcome back to Coast Vue. I have Jourdan Nicaud from Nicaud Restaurant Group. And Jourdan, it occurs to me that you and I could probably do a show a week for the next several weeks and still not run out of things to talk about. And one of the things I'm really conscious of is that when I'm dealing with someone like you who's invested in so many communities across the coast, and we spent time talking about Pascagoula and Biloxi, and you're going to leave somebody out. But one of the things that I want to mention is that we're gifted in coastal Mississippi now because we have a collection of mayors across the coast that have done amazing things in their lives and then decided to come back and be the mayor. And that makes a difference when you're in a leadership role. One is, for example, Pass Christian. You've had the opportunity to work with the mayor of Pass Christian, and I know you love that city. What's the latest there?
So we have the new restaurant which opened up. We have a new development we're actually doing right now, and it's going to be 36 hotel rooms, 2 more restaurants, and 4 more retail. And the mayor's been great. The board of aldermen, they've all been awesome, and they've been really helpful and kind of letting us, once again, you said earlier, making it to where developers can develop and helping us go around the zoning and building ordinances and make it to where the project works and is viable, which to stay within code guidelines. And Mayor Rafferty's been a really big supporter of us, and we really appreciate it.
So I'm going to shift gears a little bit, because I know people might be interested in some of these questions I'm about to ask. Well, the first one is, do you consider yourself a success?
I can consider myself a success. I mean, I think I've been very successful in the things that I have done. I'm not sure if success, I think, means different things to everybody. So I think financially, I've done very well, and I've been very fortunate in what I've done. But yeah, I mean, I think I've been successful. I think it's funny, if you would ask my parents this when I decided to not be a doctor, and they would tell you that no at that point in time. But I think now they're very happy with me.
I know they are. And what's interesting about people like you, and you're right. I view you as successful myself, but there's so much yet to be done. You're only 32, right? Is that 32? Yeah, 32. Let that soak in for a second. But how much more do you have left to do?
I mean, and that's for me. It really is. There isn't a number. There isn't a goal thing. I get asked a lot, like, what is my goal? What is my goal? And I know, actually, as a successful person, I'm supposed to have goals and be very goal oriented. And honestly, what we actually look at, though, is we look at filling voids, and we look at saying, hey, we go to a certain area. There's an opportunity here. This is what's missing from this area, and this could make this area better. And that's really what I look for is, what can I do to help make this area better? And it's another opportunity. And so that's what I'm saying. So I mean, I'm not sure I'll ever be done. I think I'll keep going and going and going until there's no more voids in Mississippi.
Well, I love the way you think about it. Entrepreneurship's not easy. We both know that. So it means you're going to have setbacks along the way. Certainly being in the restaurant business during the pandemic is nothing to cheer about, for sure. And lots of challenges that you had to face there. But what you seem calm to me. I know that you're not, and people would have said that of me when I was running, major media companies. But in a way, I kind of was. I mean, I had a lot going on in my life, but I was able to sort through it and keep things in perspective. How do you push through those difficult times?
Honestly, faith is a big thing, and one of the things my father's taught me since I was young is that it all works out. There's never a reason to stress. Just concentrate on the problem, figure out your problem, and take them one by one, and eventually all building blocks work out. And believe that in God, and that he has a plan, and that it'll all work out based on His plan. If it's not meant to be right now, it's not meant to be, and if it is meant to be, it is meant to be.
Your dad is Kent Nicaud, the CEO of Memorial, and your mother's super active in the community. They set a great example for you, I know, and for your brother as well. So when you think about getting a good night's sleep, what's a normal number of hours for you at night? So
I go to bed late. And then it's weird. I either have wake up at 5:30 a.m. and I can't stop, or I wake up at 9. There's no real middle ground in there. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, I go to bed early, and I get up early, really early.
Although I will tell you that's changed now that I'm married, because my wife's a doctor, and so she now has to get up at like 5:30 to 4:45 every morning. So I think I've gotten up a lot earlier now that
Well, hey, remind us what kind of doctor she is.
So she's an internal medicine resident, and she's actually starting her fellowship in hematology oncology, which is cancer and blood, at Tulane this July. And so,
good for her! Congratulations to her, and it's been fun watching your newlywed life together. What keeps you up at night?
What keeps you up at night? The problems I haven't solved during the day, and there's always some, and right now the biggest one we're having is staffing and employees, because there's not enough of them to go around. Hey, so we're out of time, man. I wish we had more time, but when we come back together again, I want to talk about habits of successful people. What do you think are personality traits of a leader that you really respect? Who are the kind of people that you follow? Whose career inspires you? There's so much more to talk about, but Jourdan, you're an inspiring young man, and I've really enjoyed our opportunities to visit, and it can continue to be excited about Coast of Mississippi. We need people like you, and we appreciate what you're doing. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, sir. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
You bet. This has been Jourdan Nicaud from the Nicaud Restaurant Group. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, sir.